And the Oscar goes to Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
A victorious night for the superhero fantasy. It took home 7 awards with the coveted Best Picture Oscar as the icing on the cake.
I think one of the things that I realized growing up is that one of the best things we can do for each other is shelter each other from the chaos of this crazy world we live in.
Michelle Yeoh.
Michelle Yeoh made Oscar history, becoming the first ever Asian woman to win Best Actress. And yes, you've guessed it, for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
For all the little boys and girls who look like me watching tonight, this is a beacon of hope and possibilities. This is proof that dreams dream big and dreams do come true. And ladies, don't let anybody tell you you are ever past your prime. Never give up.
And the Oscar goes to...
Best Actor went against the run of form, going to Brendan Fraser for The Whale, in which he plays the role of Charlie, an overweight, reclusive gay English teacher who tries to restore his relationship with his teenage daughter.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you again, each one and all. I'm so grateful to you. Good night.
The other film, which also got a slew of awards, including Best International Feature, was the German-language World War I epic, All Quiet on the Western Front. In all, it took home 4 awards.
Thank you.
The 95th Academy Awards went off without any incident. Unlike last year's infamous slap, one difference, the red carpet was not actually red for the first time in 62 years. It was champagne-coloured.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has promised to rebuild as he visited 10 cities in Hatay province after the area was struck especially hard by the February 6th earthquake. Hundreds of thousands of people across 11 provinces are having to shelter in tents or temporary accommodation after losing their homes. Both Erdogan and his government's response to the natural disaster have come under the spotlight, with critics accusing them of failing to prepare the earthquake-prone country for a disaster in waiting. The death toll from the quake has now risen to 48,000 in Turkey alone, with at least 6,000 more in Syria. Hatay suffered numerous aftershocks, which further added to the suffering. An international donors conference is set to take place in Brussels on March 16 to collect funds to help rebuild the affected areas. The World Bank estimates that the February 6th earthquakes did almost 33 billion euros in damage, while the Turkish Business Journal puts the cost at nearly 42 billion.
Thousands have taken to the streets in Chisinau, the capital of Moldova, demanding that the government fully covers the costs of winter energy bills and urging lawmakers not to involve the country in war. Opponents of pro-Western President Maya Sandu have repeatedly called for her to step down, convinced that Russia should be Moldova's #1 partner. Local authorities say the demonstrators are coordinated by pro-Russian oligarchs Vladimir Plahotniuk and Ilan Shor, who are wanted internationally for corruption charges. The United States has accused Russia of wanting to destabilize the Republic of Moldova in order to overthrow the pro-European government in Chisinau. Moldovan police said on Sunday they had foiled a plot by groups of Russian-backed actors who were promised €9,000 to organize mass disorder during the protest. 7 people were detained. Thousands of demonstrators staged fresh protests in Greece on Sunday, demanding justice for victims of the country's deadliest train crash 2 weeks ago. Anger is growing over safety failures that led to the tragedy, and it's ratcheting up pressure on the government. Protesters flooded Athens' Syntagma Square, waving banners that read, "We won't forget, we won't forgive." Those 57 people, many of them students, were killed when a passenger train and freight train collided head-on in central Greece on the 28th of February. 4 railway officials have been charged. but public anger has focused on the mismanagement of the network. Elections are scheduled later this spring, with opinion polls showing a drop in support for the ruling Conservative government.
Relief for some, as governments in the UK and US took extraordinary steps to potentially avoid a major financial crisis after two banks failed. Silicon Valley Bank, which mostly catered to technology workers and venture capital-backed companies, collapsed last week, marking the second largest bank failure in history. Signature Bank followed 2 days later. On Sunday, US regulators announced that the bank's customers will be able to access their deposits, amid fears that the situation could spread further. In the UK, the Treasury and the Bank of England helped facilitate the sale of Silicon Valley Bank UK to HSBC, a move that the head of the Treasury said would protect deposits without taxpayer money.
Piles of rubbish are littering the streets of Paris as garbage collectors continue to strike. The industrial action comes in protest against a controversial government pension reform that will raise the retirement age in France from 62 to 64. Locals are complaining of the smell and say it is affecting tourism. President Emmanuel Macron appears undaunted by the trash piling up and has refused to meet with union leaders. The bill was approved by the French Senate on Saturday and is currently being reviewed by a commission before being submitted for a final parliamentary vote on Thursday.
A three-way summit in San Diego, California gets underway Monday, finalising a trilateral security partnership between Australia, the UK and the US. The AUKUS deal provides nuclear-powered submarines to Australia. Prime Ministers Rishi Sunak and Anthony Albanese are meeting US President Joe Biden. The partnership was announced in 2021 to counter Beijing's assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region. But it caused a row with France, which needed smoothing over by Biden after Australia ditched a prior deal with Paris.
North Korea has test-fired 2 strategic cruise missiles from a submarine just as US-South Korea military drills are due to begin. Pyongyang says the launch confirmed the reliability of its underwater offensive operations of submarine units that form part of its nuclear deterrent. The country's leader, Kim Jong-un, recently railed at the prospective joint military drills at a meeting with his generals. He views such military exercises as a major security threat, though Washington and Seoul say they are defensive.
Since the day of his election 10 years ago, Pope Francis' papacy has differed from his predecessors. Being the first Roman pontiff from Latin America and the first to name himself after St. Francis of Assisi were some of the early signs of the change he would bring about within the Church. His reforms and comments on climate change and poverty have made headlines around the world. He has been working tirelessly to foster relations with the Islamic world, becoming the first Pope to visit Iraq.
Durante i 10 anni di Bergoglio noi abbiamo assistito alla più grande redistribuzione di potere tra città, nazioni e continenti nella storia della Chiesa contemporanea. Il vero potere nella Chiesa sta nel collegio dei 120 cardinali che eleggeranno il nuovo Papa. Sono diminuiti i cardinali, i posti, il peso geopolitico dell'Occidente ed è aumentato esponenzialmente quello dell'Oriente.
But many in the conservative wing of the Roman Curia have long criticized Pope Francis. We met Franca Giansoldati. She recently released the book she wrote with Cardinal Mueller. He's considered to be an open critic of Pope Francis.
Nella Chiesa ci sono sempre state destra e sinistra, conservatori e progressisti, però si è sempre arrivato a una sintesi che in qualche modo riusciva a contenere tutto quanto. Con Papa Francesco, secondo i conservatori, questo modus operandi viene meno.
Criticism against Pope Francis has somehow intensified after the death of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, as well as rumors about his possible resignation.
Francesco non ha intenzione di dimettersi. Müller nel libro che abbiamo fatto sottolinea che le dimissioni non sono una cosa positiva per l'unità della Chiesa. E lui stesso, anche se appunto è il fronte opposto a Papa Francesco, è il primo a non volere le dimissioni di Papa Bergoglio.
Pope Francis has had to lead the church through some of the darkest moments of our times, from the pandemic to the war in Ukraine. He has made countless appeals and has condemned the conflict and has expressed interest to visit both Ukraine and Russia as part of the Holy See's efforts to bring an end to the ongoing conflict. Giorgia Orlandi for Euronews in the Vatican City.
One step closer to a Grand Slam in the Six Nations. Ireland secured a fourth straight victory in rugby action on Sunday against Scotland, moving on to 19 points, just 4 more than defending champions France. Meanwhile, hosts England suffered a record-breaking loss to Les Tricolores on Saturday. The French came away with 7 tries at Twickenham Stadium.
J'ai dit aux joueurs avant le match, c'est que ce stade il récompense la bravoure. Il récompense les équipes qui se livrent, collectivement. Ce stade, il récompense ça, ce type d'équipe. Et aujourd'hui, on a été comme ça. On a été une équipe brave, engagée, déterminée, conquérante, et qui savait pourquoi elle était là.
In week 5 of 5 next weekend, Scotland will take on Italy in their final game. Dupont's men will meet Wales at Stade de France, while Ireland will have their eye on the Triple Crown when they take on England at the Aviva Stadium.